Impossible. Let's ask Matt Schlapp, a former White House political director under President George W. Bush, and Mark Hanna, Democratic analyst and former campaign aide for John Kerry and Barack Obama. Gentlemen, good morning or good afternoon. Welcome.
Great to be here, James.
Matt, let me ask you about this statement from the Chief of Staff saying, you know, we have other things to do. Can you really just focus 10% of your attention on all of this? It's not just the IRS. It's Benghazi. It's others.
Yeah, and if you think about most of the staffers in the White House complex are there to support the president and his policy agenda and his reputation and with the press. So it won't be 10% of their time that'll be spent on this scandal. Jamie, it's more like 90% of their time that will be spent on this scandal. And the problem is there is no scandal. There are scandals. They did an effective job as an administration at pushing these disclosures past the election date. The problem with being so effective in pushing them past the election date is that each one of these very serious policy questions and oversight questions is now hitting at the same time, right at the time when the president would like to pivot and actually have a second-term agenda. I can't say in the strongest terms how serious this is in terms of Barack Obama's second term. If he can't get out of this, I think that he'll see a second term that really accomplishes very little.
Well, Mark, the other things on President Obama's agenda are important as well. He wants to implement Obamacare. He wants to provide jobs. Here's what he had to say this week. I want to ask you about it.
Others may get distracted by chasing every fleeting issue that passes by, but the middle class will always be my #1 focus. Period. Your jobs, your families, your communities. That's why I ran for president.
Mark, my question is the middle class not affected, are you willing to say, by the IRS situation, if they were a Tea Party or a Patriot donator, or the Benghazi situation where 4 Americans were killed?
The middle class in America is deeply affected by our national security and by the integrity of our IRS. That's why the president took very decisive action this week, firing the head of the IRS, and is launching now 3 different investigations. One is being launched through Congress. You've got an IG investigation and now a DOJ criminal investigation into the IRS. I think the president shares Americans' outrage at what's happening now and is channeling that outrage and taking decisive action. I also think the one thing Matt said is really smart, that the president is trying to pivot. Americans aren't really obsessed with kind of these controversies.
Why is it smart?
It's smart because Americans aren't as obsessed as maybe we in the punditry class maybe with all these different controversies du jour. They want to know that their job is secure. They want to know that we're going to be able to get to a balanced budget eventually. They want to know, for example, that our national security is being restored with new legislation that protects our embassy personnel, that protects our consulate personnel, and Republicans in Congress would want nothing more than to continue this sideshow and distract the the presidency from doing the work he was elected to do.
You seem to suggest then, Mark, and I understand that you have worked in the administration for the president, that the American public isn't concerned about transparency, which is something that the president really talked so much about in the campaign. So, Matt, let me ask you, the latest twist seems to be that the administration may have known, or the IRS may have known during the campaign season, that these groups were being targeted, groups that may have not supported the president or his platform. How does that impact it, Matt?
Yeah, there's no may involved here. It's very clear that the president's pick to be the general counsel at the Department of Treasury and the deputy secretary at the Department of Treasury were told about this IG investigation. It probably also means that they knew of potential wrongdoing even before that investigation was initiated. So now we have this whole conversation about how far up the chain this information went and if anything inappropriate was done. The problem here, Jamie, is a question of timing. Clearly, the #1 goal of the first term of the Obama administration was to get a second term. And having these embarrassing revelations come out before Election Day would have had a negative impact on their chances.
All right, let me just jump to Mark.
They did everything they could to delay these findings, and we're going to find out. Look, I'm not going to make an allegation. We'll find out what's true. We're going to find out what they knew.
Let me jump to Mark, because, Mark, you mentioned that the investigations are ongoing. The president has called for answers. This we know. The question I have is this other latest twist, that the person that was responsible for giving these exemptions and directing more investigation or tougher standards on those conservative groups, has now been put in charge of implementing Obamacare. Your comments?
Right. My comments are, if you think that for a moment that the president or the chief of staff have knowledge of every federal employee and where they're appointed or what they're doing, or if every Capitol Police officer that shows up late for work somehow is a responsibility of the president. No, look, Matt, this is important, and this is why this is important, because our economy is rebounding, but not very fast. We want all Americans for this job growth to occur. We want for national security. We need to focus on very real challenges our country faces collectively. And so, no, this hasn't been the best week for the administration politically, but I think the president has handled it well. Anytime he's addressed this head-on, he released 100 emails, that were to show transparency and to demonstrate, to sort of walk the walk when you talk of transparency. And what do you have? You have Republicans in Congress. They're staffers. This
How
is
about
the real
transparency when this occurred? How about when this occurred?
They fabricated and misled the American people. And why aren't we focused on this right now?
The vultures have come home to roost. I appreciate that both of you have made the points on both sides. Everybody's looking for answers. I think it's of great concern, and we will follow all the developments with you as well. Thanks, guys.
Jamie.
Okay.
Thank you.
Kelly.
Something else we're also doing, we are tracking some new tensions on the Korean Peninsula.